Okay, and then we've got a lot to fit in this session. So let me just get to my PowerPoint. Here we go. Right, so in terms of today, we are going to be looking at how to respond to the fixed mindset, because whether you're when you're parenting, you are influencing. Okay, so how we are around our own fixed mindset and developing the growth mindset is important. But also when our children around us are having a fixed mindset moment, sometimes we can say things that magnify the fixed unknowingly. Sometimes we can then make changes to our responses. So I'm just going to highlight some practical information today with you. Okay. So we're going to take it. So in terms of the event thought reaction, so events happen, thoughts start popping in the head, and then we react with our emotions and how we feel. And if we're having a fixed mindset thought, then the emotions can be linked to that fixed mindset. So disappointment, embarrassment, guilt, and that can then spiral into more high energy emotions, worry, anxiety, anger, frustration, jealousy, and so on and so forth. As mindset influencers, as parents are, we can help support that transition and mindset shift from becoming fixed to growth by becoming more aware of mindset for ourselves. Okay, because very often the thoughts we have become our words. So you will hear the phrases that your children regularly say: I can't do it, it's too hard. What if this happens? What if that happens? It might be that they don't want to let people down. It might be that they fear challenge, so they want things that are easy and quick. They want the end product rather than how to get to the end product. So they might ask for help quite regularly. Okay. So those words that we hear, it's then how we respond in order to shift to become more growth orientated. And very often, when we have someone around us that's having a fixed mindset, I'll just show you this, because very often what we do is absorb what we are hearing, seeing, and how that person is feeling. Okay. And it's quite a skill to observe what you can hear, see, and feel, but don't absorb it. Because once we absorb it, we become part of it. And I often say, try to create the calm rather than join the chaos, because it's very easy, depending on where our mindset is, to get embroiled in the emotion around the fixed mindset, especially with our children. So it's about pressing a bit of a pause button as a parent and just stand and observe what's going on. Don't try to control the situation, because that's something else we want to take over to make things better. Okay. And sometimes stepping back and just observing and letting the emotions ride is really important, because then the conversations you can have around the feeling is a lot easier. Okay. Trying to tackle the fixed mindset while they're having the emotion can just exacerbate it. Okay. So it might be where they ride the emotion and later on you go back and you say, do you know what? I noticed you were really disappointed earlier, or you were getting really frustrated. Let's have a chat about it, because what were you thinking at the time? So get into those fixed mindset thoughts that may have been occurring. And it might be, I didn't think I'd be good enough, or everything was going wrong for me. And it gives you a starting point, but when everything's more calm. Okay. And often our fixed mindset links to our perception of what's going on. So we're limiting ourselves to actually everything that's going on. The fixed mindset is impulsive, it's emotionally driven, and because we have limited access to actually what is going on, we start to make things up. So we start to jump to conclusions, make assumptions. Okay. So it is about pausing to get a different perception. And as parents, we can provide that different perspective. In terms of where we're going to go with this, I'm going to bring in something that I used a lot as a teacher and it was a game changer, but also I use it for myself personally, but I also use it with children as well. But I'm going to start to introduce it by showing this. Rather than spending time on the things you're good at, get good get good at the things you spend your time on. So it's almost straight away a flip of perspective, okay? Because you tend to find adults as well as children will do lots of what they're good at, okay? Because it makes them feel good and they look good in front of others. But actually, in terms of learning, we get good at the things we spend our time on. But because we have such a fast-paced world, and I mentioned this before, we live in this Amazon effect. Everything's so fast. Okay, Amazon, book the next day. Food, just eat. It's there. Okay, learning isn't like that. So I'm going to introduce something to you that will help to change perception on learning experiences, but also will help with language as well. Okay. So, as learners, we all need to have time in what we call the learning zone and the performance zone. But what is the difference? So, I'm going to show you these images here, and this is what I've used in schools and I use with children as well. You'll start to spot the difference, okay? So, there are four main differences around these two images. So, in the learning zone, you can see here that we have lots of match balls. Okay, so there's lots of balls here, practice balls, because in the learning zone is where we experience what I call deliberate practice. So it's where you are deliberately practicing a skill again and again and again. And over time, you have nudges of progress as you start to master that skill. Okay. The other thing you'll notice here is in the learning zone, we have the practice net, whereas in the performance zone, we've got the test net, okay? Or the match net with the goalkeeper in there. So in the learning zone, this is about mastering different skills. You're not going to stick to what's easy here. You're going to practice things that are challenging. You're going to practice things that are hard, that you are going to struggle with. But in the learning zone, it's about experiencing that struggle and feeling comfortable with it. So if you can kick the balls through the bottom nets, then you're not going to stick just doing that. You're going to raise the challenge bar to include the top right, left-hand corners. So if your child is in a learning zone experiencing where they're learning something new, they're not just going to stick to what they can do. It's about encouraging them to, okay, you can do this now. You've mastered that. Now, because we're practicing, we need to do something a little bit more tricky, okay? Because this is the place to do it when we're practicing and when we're learning. When they're in their lesson, they are learning. When they're going to training, they are learning, okay? So anything that's linked to lessons or training is a learning zone experience. The other thing you'll notice here is the setting is different. So they're in a learning experience. So they're in a field where there might be a coach and other players and they're practicing. Whereas the performance is the stadium or they're in front of other people. So another example would be learning for a spelling test when they're doing it at home. That's their learning zone experience, okay? The test will be in school on a Friday for 15 minutes, okay? So it's that different experience between the two. The other thing we've got here is the lines. So we've got white lines in the performance zone. We've not got those in the learning zone. So in the learning zone, it's more flexible. There's more opportunity, more options available to us. Whereas when it becomes a performance, there are rules and things we need to adhere to. So in this example, the ball needs to sit here before you kick it. In a test, you can't talk to anybody. You don't copy answers, that sort of thing. So it shifts depending on the zone. The important thing to remember here is the mindset between each zone changes, okay? And a lot of children have a misconception and get muddled up between the two. And therefore, in a learning zone experience, they may get really emotional because they can't do it, because in their mindset, they're performing. Okay, so as adults, if we can learn and understand this difference, we can communicate and support and help. Okay, so let me share with you this. So I'm bringing the learning blocks back in that we looked at in the previous session. Because if you imagine the learning zone experiences, all these learning blocks are applicable here. You are going to embrace challenge. You're going to put more time and effort in here. We don't want Amazon effect here. You're not going to get something quick here. Okay. Here's the time where we can really engage with the skills we are developing through effort, time, embracing the mistakes that we make. Okay. Getting feedback, whether that be from a coach or whether that be from us as parents. We're going to give feedback here. Okay. Whether it be a teacher in a lesson. And most importantly here, we're going to have self-belief here, because if we don't have belief in the learning zone, we're not going to get much further. Because a child, if they're thinking this is a performance, they're not going to put themselves up for a challenge if they don't think they're going to be able to do it. Okay, so it's really important the language we use around this learning zone. It's about embracing challenge. It's not about doing easy. It's about embracing new mistakes and giving yourself time to learn from them. It's about looking at the progress that we're making while we're in this learning zone, okay, and how we use that feedback. So all these learning blocks reappear in this experience. So if you imagine, then we've learned a lot about the fixed mindset. So I just want you to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's having a fixed mindset within the learning zone, and what that would look, sound, and feel like, and what language you might hear. So I'm just going to pause for about 15 seconds, and I want you to imagine the language you would hear in this learning zone if the individual was having a fixed mindset, but their mindset was more to do with performing than learning. So I'm just going to go quiet. Okay. So you might already be thinking about the language you hear at home when children are doing homework. Again, remember, that's a skill that they're learning in school, but it's not to be performed at home. It's to be mastered at home as well, in a different environment. But very often as parents, and I know I used to do this, it used to become a performance because I used to shift the mindset, because I used to think it has to be all right at home for it to go in school right and perfect. So it is about that perception of what it is you want the children to engage in. It's about their learning still. They might not have mastered it. Sometimes it might be something that they've mastered in school, and school will tell you that it's a performance, okay? So it's something for them to do on their own. Otherwise, it's something that they're taking from school and relearning it at home in a different environment. In terms of what you might hear, it might be, I don't want to do this, it's too hard. I can't do it. Will you do it for me? Or will you help me? Okay. It might be, can I do it for 5 minutes and then stop? Okay, so you might hear that linking to time. You might hear some negative, I don't want to know, don't tell me, I don't want to know, that sort of thing, if you're trying to support, because they want it, if it's a performance, they want to do it on their own. But actually, if it's learning, support is good. Not showing them the answer, it's about getting to the outcome. And that's what this learning zone is about. It's about embracing the learning to get to the result. Okay. They might not want to ask and answer questions if they think it's a performance as well. They say, I can't do it quite quickly. So get used to the language around the fixed mindset, but also if it's in that learning zone experience, then we can then sort of support in shifting. Because if we look at the performance zone, it's a very different place. So this can be a test, competition, some sort of tournament. Okay, so it's where you've mastered your skills and then you are showing what you can do, basically. So you're hoping that mistakes will be minimal and you are not going to get feedback until the end. So a lot of children who perceive learning as performance very quickly create a barrier to learning. So the mistakes learning block and the feedback learning block become barriers because their mindset is can't make mistakes. So then mistakes are bad here. And any feedback that I get here is a criticism of my performance. So it is about understanding the zones that we're in. And if you think about percentage, in terms of learning and performing, I would say in terms of experiences, learning zone should be about 85%. Performance is about 15. Because if you think about going to dance lessons, gymnastic lessons, swimming lessons, going to football lessons, having a lesson in maths, history, geography, they are all learning. They might perform when they do a badge in swimming. They might perform when they do a test in gymnastics to get to the next level. But that's a small part of the experience. But I wonder how often we influence at the wrong time as parents. So as parents, do we compare our children to other children in the learning zone? Okay, how come my child's not on that badge in swimming? How come my child's not on this? Or we begin to naturally compare our children, but also we compare them to our siblings if they've got siblings as well. Okay, so it's really understanding for ourselves as parents the zone that our children are in at any given time in order to communicate. Oh, we're going swimming today. You're going to go in your learning zone. So you're going to be learning some new skills. Yeah, you're going to be growing your brain or however you want to whatever terminology you want to use, it's about shifting their mindset away from performance. If it's not going to be a performance, let's shift it away from that. Because I can guarantee they'll start comparing themselves, ranking their intelligence, ranking their ability, and then they create internal pressure as well. So performance zone, therefore, we've got blocks that disappear. So I just want to share with you an experience that I had, and I've had one since this actually, with a couple of my one-to-ones. So Malik is a one-to-one I work with in London, and he's 7 years old and he's very sporty. And mum came to me purely because whenever he was at football practice, he would have a meltdown if he thought people were better than him or he wasn't good enough or things went wrong for him. So one day I sat him down and I asked him, I said this question, Malik, what does learning mean to you? And this was what his answer was. Well, learning should be easy because tests are hard. So bear in mind what I've just said to you about learning and performance. Malik has the mindset that learning should be easy, which means when he's faced with a challenge in the learning zone, how come I just can't do it? Because learning's easy. I shouldn't be making mistakes because learning's easy. And why am I being told how to improve? Because learning's easy and I should be doing it. Okay. So his mindset was in a very different place. But actually, guess where this stemmed from? Mum was in on the one-to-one because she's learning as well. And she came to me afterwards and she went, oh my gosh, I know why he thinks that. And I went, go on, share with me. She says, because he's picked things up quickly and relatively easy, I've talked about Malik pick things up. Malik finds learning easy. So Malik has associated learning and easy together. And suddenly it was a light bulb moment. So I had that role then to flick his perception. And this is what I said to him. Should learning not be where you struggle and find things difficult in preparation for the test? And it was a look on his face that thought, never thought of it like that. Because we'd done about the learning blocks. And I said, when you are learning, that is when you should be embracing your challenge and all the rest of it. What he was doing is putting himself into performance in a learning zone, which was why he was getting upset when things went wrong and he hated feedback. Okay, so that's one example. Another quick example, which happened last week, a young boy called Joshua, who's 9, so it's a bit older than Malik, goes to football training every Saturday. Well, goes to football matches every Saturday. And mum and dad said he never goes for challenges in the match. He'll never go forward and put himself forward for things. He backs off. And he's got the skill to do it, but he's backing off. So I was getting to the root cause of this and thinking, is he fearing making mistakes? Is he worried about getting hurt? Is he what ifing? Is he a people pleaser? He doesn't want to let people down. And that was it. Because his coaches, in a funny way, their language was, come on, guys, you're giving me burgers. We don't want burgers. We want steak. In fact, we want lobster. So they were talking about performance as being, come on, we can do it. But actually, they were in a performance, but then there was no opportunity to learn to become the steak and the lobster. So every Saturday they were rocking up to matches, but there's no learning in between because they weren't doing any practice. So in terms of the cycle, it was performance, performance, performance. And the expectation was, you're this, we want this, we want this. But how can you improve the performance without the learning in between? So my discussion was all around what he takes from that experience in terms of practicing at home in order to improve for the performance and have the confidence to go for the next challenge and so on and so forth. So very different situation, both linked to football, ironically, but very different situations. So really get connected with where your children's mindset may be at any given time. So I'm going to go into this bit now. So to finish off, we're going to look at some of the common things that children say and when they say it, okay, and then how we might respond to it. So I'm not good at this. So if they're saying I'm not good at this and they're in their performance zone, maybe it's because what they're faced with is challenging. Okay, so the questions they're getting in a test, they're not quite there yet, or the team they're playing against is more able, more advanced, whatever it might be. If they're saying this in the learning zone, then it's something to pick up on. Okay, because at the end of the day, if they're in the learning zone, it's highly likely what they're doing is unfamiliar. So no one is good at unfamiliar things. Get that word in the vocab, in your vocab as well. Things are unfamiliar in the learning zone, which is why things are challenging, why we're going to make mistakes, why we're going to have to put more effort in. So no one is good at unfamiliar things at the beginning. Everything's hard at the beginning. It's about that learning takes time. So can we work out what you're missing? What do you already know? What's going to help us here? Let's take our time with it. So it's about really understanding that practice in that learning zone experience. Okay. The next one, my friend can do it, but I can't. A really common one. Okay, so comparing yourself to others. Again, how has your friend gone about learning this? So again, you're referring back to the learning zone experience because it's highly likely as they've spent more time here and they started to execute the skill, whereas maybe your child isn't there yet. Okay, so if they're not there yet, what's the plan? Because children use the power of yet, or I don't get it yet, I don't understand it yet. And that yet opens up a door of opportunity because it provides time to learn it. But they've got to have a plan. So what are they going to do? What learning blocks are they going to embrace? Are they going to look at some mistakes they've made and then make progress with those? Are they going to embrace the feedback from somebody in order to make the progress? Remember, it's nudges of progress. Okay, they might actually go and talk to their friend. You can do this. What are you doing that I'm missing out on? Okay, learn. And often as a teacher, sometimes when another child explains to another child, it's almost like they've got some sixth sense or language that they understand between them, and they understand it better. So actually use that language from friendship groups to engage in that learning experience as well. Okay. Next one. This is too hard. Okay. Again, the learning zone, it's meant to be hard because you're not going to be, we don't want easy here because remember, we're growing the brain. We're growing those neural connections and pathways. So remember, we grow by challenging ourselves. We don't grow when things are easy. We grow when we face challenges. And if you're learning, we want it to be hard. We don't want it easy here. So it's that conversation around maybe things that you found challenging and now you find them easier because you've been in your learning zone learning them. Share your experiences, okay, to make this normal. The last one, I got 15 out of 20. What did you get? So this is where children start ranking their intelligence, and the fixed mindset will do this because the fixed mindset wants us to see where we fit in, okay? And the important thing to remember is once they've been in a performance zone, i.e. they've had a test, it's about what progress have they made. It's not necessarily about the outcome. It's where were you last week? Where are you this week? And now you're going to go back in your learning zone. So actually, I would hone in on the progress. So last week you got 12 out of 20. This week you got 15 out of 20. So you've got 3 points progress. That's brilliant. Okay. So maybe if we made another 3 points progress, we'll get 18 next week. But what are we going to do to get there? So now we're back in the learning zone. What are we going to do? So same as they missed the scoring a goal in football or they missed doing something in another activity. Now they're going to go back in the learning zone and learn from it. And, you know, if you think about Premiership football players, they don't spend the time sat down every day of the week and then rock up on a match on a Saturday. They're in their learning zone, practicing skills, ready, and they record the match and then look at it and look where they need to go next. So it is that cycle of learning, performance, learn it. So that majority of time is spent learning. So if we try to hook in as on the progress, because very often as parents, and I know I used to do this, it was like, what did you get in your spellings? We hook into the end result. Actually, what characteristics did we see when they were learning those spellings? They really stuck at it. They were resilient. They were learning from the mistakes. They took time and effort with them. So hook into the behaviours that you see in that learning zone. So when they come running out of school and they say, I got 15 out of 20, that's because you did this, this, and this. So let's repeat those behaviours, okay? Rather than just hook into the score, because then that becomes a fixation. Okay. Hope that makes sense in terms of that. The other thing, I can send this out actually. I could send this poster because this is a nice way of embracing these learning blocks, because it says here, it does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. And here we've got an example of what a challenge can feel like. It's like you've got this big heavy backpack on and it's like, oh, I can keep going. But if you notice what's happening as time goes on in the learning zone, that backpack is getting smaller because they're learning and mastering the skill. I can handle this now. Okay. So remind them of challenges that they once faced, but now they can do it easily. Yeah, if they were learning to ride a bike with stabilizers, but now they're learning it, they're riding a bike with 2 wheels. Yeah. Before they could swim half a length, now they're doing a different badge. Whatever it is, hook back to where they were and where they've come from. Okay. And if it gets too hard, maybe I'll try again soon, so I'll come back to it. Or I find a different strategy. Or it's okay to ask for support, but you don't want it doing for you. You want how to the sort of strategy to get to the product or the end thing. Okay. So that's a nice little poster that I can send out to help sort of break things down a little bit. The other thing I can offer, just mindful of time, is a set of question cards that create a different focus on learning and performing. So it might be a question, what was your best mistake today in school? It might be, what made you think hard today? What made your brain grow today? So I've got a series of questions that I use with my one-to-ones that I can put on a resource that you can either email me directly and ask for it and I'll email it back, or I could also email it into school and they put it on the website as a PDF. and parents can download it. I could do both things. But also on my website, I've got a stash of free resources that you can hook into that can help your knowledge of mindset on top of the sessions we've done, but also how to engage with your children around mindset development as well. So, session 4. I hope that's been helpful in terms of wrapping everything up a little bit. I can go on and on. But it'd be lovely. Please keep in touch if you need to. Get in touch with me. Have a look on the website. The videos will be, if not already on, I'm not sure yet. I'll speak to school, but the videos will be going on to school for you to recap on certain elements of the development that we've done with parents. But I've thoroughly enjoyed every session, and thank you so much, because obviously it was postponed from last week to this week, and I really appreciate that as well. I'll hang around if you've got any questions, but yeah, take care and see you all soon.
Thanks ever so much, Liz. Really appreciate it. Take care.
No
Bye.
problem. Thank you.